Hi everyone, this is TCG and welcome back to another battle video that I recorded. Here I am going up against another person who is playing a Weavile Exeggcute deck. So, here we are shuffling our decks here, and honestly I think that Weavile Exeggcute is a bit overrated, and I'm not going to use this video to back up my point, but here's the thing. You need to evolve Sneasel into Weavile, and then get 4 Exeggcutes into your discard pile or your hand very early on in order to get the lead that you really need in order to win with this deck. If you don't win, if you don't get the early lead, you're just going to be too far behind really fast to do anything. That being said, it is a really fun deck, and a cheap deck if you want to be competitive, but you don't want to, excuse me, and if you don't want to spend a lot of money to get EXs and ace specs that are really expensive. So, it looks like he mulliganed, which means that I get to draw an extra card from before we begin our battle, and you can choose not to, but there's really no drawback to drawing an extra card, unless he mulligans like 59 times and you're down to your last card and you're like, nah, I'll decide not to take it. But still, if he gets down that far, then really you got something wrong with your deck or your shuffling. So anyway, I think he starts out with a Sneasel here. I could be wrong. And another thing with Weavile Exeggcute is if you start out with the egg and your opponent plays Verbank and Laser, it's possible for you to get donked even with the new rules. So it's very risky. But, you know, it's risky putting the egg in any deck, in my opinion. That's why I don't play it in Blastoise, for example. And speaking of that, I do have another deck besides this Darkrai deck. I just don't ever play it because I'm trying to get as used to this one as possible. So, he actually starts out with Sneasel, and then puts a Darkrai EX on the bench. Darkrai is actually a very good card to put into this deck, because if you can't get the Sneasel in play, you can at least put Darkrai out there to be a tank, and to do a fair amount of damage each turn, if you can get it powered up. So it looks like I play an Ultra Ball. I'm probably going to go for a Darkrai here. Really, at this point, I know that it is Weavile Exeggcute because I've seen him earlier that day playing against other people. But if I was just happening upon this, I would think that it was a Darkrai deck, and I might have played a little differently if I had thought that. I might have tried to go for the turn 1 Night Spear instead of just leisurely setting stuff up. So I have the Darkrai set up. I play a Dark Claw onto the Darkrai, and then Laser. And looks like he's begging for an in here because he had a really bad hand. So it looks like that's what I'm going to play. The Random Receiver was the last card in my hand, so if I didn't want to play the in, then I would have to rely on a top deck next turn to get something good. And I'd really rather play a supporter this turn. And I like helping both myself and my opponent out. That's just something nice that I like to do. But at any rate, so we both shuffle our hands into our decks, and then we both get to draw 6 cards. Since I had no hand, I just shuffle my deck instead. And after cutting each other's decks, let's see what I pull and what he pulls. Looks like I got another Darkrai, I think. Yep. And yeah, I see an energy switch in there and another... No, that's a bicycle. But I can't play the bicycle because I don't have enough cards in my hand. So I'm going to Tool Scrapper away my Dark Claw, then play my other Dark Claw just to get fewer cards in my hand so I can draw more cards. I'm going to Dark Patch onto the Darkrai again. I can retreat my Sableye and Energy Switch onto Darkrai for a turn 1 Night Spear. And it looks like that's exactly what I'm going to do. And 32 the bench Darkrai, which is now the active Darkrai, and I get to take a prize. If that was really, I don't know if too many decks where you want your starting Pokemon to be. I'm. Let me think of how I want to say this. That turn one Night Spear would have hurt just about anything. Even if I was up against an EX and it would have taken 2 turns to knock it out instead of 1, like I knocked out that Sableye, it still would be a big blow. So he's going to level ball for a Sneasel, and that's probably a good thing to do because he has his Darkrai up there. It is going to survive at least one more turn. He tries to evolve into Weavile, and I remind him he can't do that first turn. He's like, oh yeah, my bad. So he's probably trying to decide what he wants to do. Oh, Dark Patch onto Sneasel. That's actually pretty smart. So Darkrai can last another turn, and I could always use Pokemon Catcher to bring up the Sneasel and knock it out, but the thing is, Catcher requires a coin flip now, so it would not be a guarantee that I would get it up into play, and plus I don't even have a Catcher in my hand, so it doesn't matter. So he plays Colress for 3 cards, but those are 3 cards that he didn't have before, preferably. And maybe he's getting exactly what he needs here. He has an Exeggcute in his hand, and I can't see what the other 2 cards are. Well, it looks like one of them is Dark Claw. So he also has an Exeggcute. Looks like he has a supporter of some kind. So he's going to pass. And now it's my turn, and I have a variety of options here. I'm going to start powering up that second Darkrai for sure. Then I play Professor Juniper, get rid of Verbank, no reason to keep it in my hand. And N. At this point, I do not want to help him out because I've already helped him out once. And competitively, you just want to help your opponent out as little as possible. So I Professor Juniper away the N. I play Mr. Mime on the bench. And try and decide what else to do. If I can't do anything, then I'm just going to Night Spear. That Darkrai now has 120 damage on it, and 30 onto the Sneasel. I believe Sneasel has 70 HP, and Weavile has 90. I know for sure Weavile has 90. I don't know what Sneasel has. I think 70. So, I know... Wait, I think he got rid of the Weavile with the Colress. So, yeah, it looked like his second card was Juniper. So he's going to Juniper away the Ultra Ball there, and an Exeggcute. And having Exeggcute in the discard pile is exactly where he wants it to be. Because Exeggcute has the propagation ability. Once during your turn, you can put it from your discard pile into your hand. And then if you discard Exeggcute for whatever reason, it resets that ability. So you can use propagation multiple times a turn. So that's really the whole basis for Weavile. You discard any number of Pokemon cards from your hand that you want, and then you draw. And then it does 30 times the number of Pokemon cards you discarded. So if you have 4 eggs, then you can discard all 4 eggs, and that does 120. And the next turn, you can just propagation the eggs back in your hand and start doing 120 all over. And it's not limited to just the Exeggcute. You can discard any number of Pokemon cards. It has to be actual Pokemon. It can't be trainers or energy. And also not dark. EXs do not count for 2. It still counts as 1. But still, it's a fun concept. I'll give it that. So he's going to level ball here for Weavile. And I don't know what we're discussing here. But at any rate, my Darkrai has 180 HP on it, which means he needs to discard 6 Pokemon in order to knock it out in one hit. But the thing with Weavile Exeggcute is you have the 4 Exeggcute already. That's 120. So you only need to find another 2 Pokemon to discard. It can be anything. He could, for whatever weird reason he wants to, and I would not do this in any time in any game, he could use Scoop Up Cyclone, the A-Spec, and bring that Darkrai up and discard that as another Pokemon. That's just a horrible strategy. So, I think he played in there, or maybe I did. I kind of got a little lost. It looks like I did because that's at the top of my discard pile. So, it's my turn, and I obviously played in. Looks like I am playing the Pokemon Catcher. My coin flips off the table, and I flip tails. And that's what I was talking about earlier. I could have, if I had flipped heads, I could bring up that Weavile and knock it out right now, but I flipped tails on the catcher. And a lot of people say if there's a coin flip involved, why even bother playing it? Well, because I like it. You know, there's still the possibility that you flip heads, and no, I'm not a fan of luck determining a game, but I am a fan of not knowing what's going to happen. A bunch of people see the matchup and they think, okay, this is how it's going to play out. And some people are really good at predicting even down to the number of prize cards taken. When you add stuff like Pokemon Catcher, which requires a coin flip, and Hypnotoxic Laser, which is used a lot, because even if you flip tails, you at least get the poison, which adds damage in between turns. Adding stuff like that adds a bit of spice to the game, in my opinion. I am a big fan of not knowing what's going to happen. And there I flip tails with Pokemon Catcher, but you have seen some other battle videos where I flip heads, and that pretty much changes the game with just that coin flip. So it looks like he plays Professor Juniper, gets another egg, at least, into the discard pile. He plays Hypnotoxic Laser, flips heads on the sleep, so I am asleep, and I'm taking 30 in between turns for poison. Now he only needs to discard 5 Pokemon instead of 6, because with Burbank City Gym in play and me poisoned, that means that I am going to take 150 from... If he can discard 5 Pokemon, that means I'm taking 150 from his attack, and then another 30 from Burbank and poison, and that's enough to knock out my Darkrai in one hit. So he's trying to decide, does he want to play another Sneasel, or does he want to discard it in order to do the exact amount of damage needed to knock me out? And he's going to do that. But it looks like I already have another Darkrai set up. And if not, I have the Darkness Energy in my hand, and that will be game. Actually, I just need to play the Laser, and he already has 60 on him, so the Laser will knock him out. So that was our first game, and at this point we decided, since that was so short, why not play another one? So, ironically, even though the first one was short, the second one was significantly longer, about the same length of time as the other videos that I've posted. So here, this is going to be probably my longest video for a long time. I'm not sure what to talk about while we're waiting for the second battle to start. Well, first of all, I will say that I am planning on going to the League Challenge at my location in Lincoln, Nebraska. That'll be December 8th. Pretty much League Challenge is similar to Battle Roads, except, of course, with the new rule changes. And yeah, pretty much the new rule changes are the only thing to really worry about. So, I will be playing this deck, probably. I do have several changes I want to make to it. I don't know, I might play my Keldeo deck instead. Maybe I'll be able to make a brand new one between now and then, and we'll see. But, long story short, I'm trying to get myself as familiar with this deck as possible, just in case I end up playing with it. So, but if you guys are watching this just to see what cards I have, don't get yourselves comfortable. I will be making changes. So it looks like we set up pretty quickly. Looks like I'm trying to decide which Pokemon to make my active. I could make Darkrai or Sableye. I decided to go with Sableye because then I can Junk Hunt. Or maybe I flipped... maybe I lost the flip, and I'm going first. No, it looks like it's not Sableye, it's Mr. Mime. That was my first Pokemon. And he starts out with the egg. And this is, at the beginning of the video I mentioned what this is like the worst possible start you can have with any deck. Before, you could start out with Tynamo and get donked by Mewtwo at double colorless energy, or you could start out with, it came to the point where you can even start out with something with 60 HP or 70 HP and it would still get knocked out by a Plasma deck. Not anymore. Now with the new rules, you are pretty much guaranteed one turn unless you have the egg. If you have the egg in your deck and you start out with the egg as your only starting Pokemon, you have to make it your active. And if your opponent decides to go first, or if you or if you decide to go second for whatever reason, no, you wouldn't even know that you had the egg. So for whatever reason, if your opponent ends up going first and they play Laser and Verbank, this is the situation where you can still get donked despite the new rules. Lucky for him, he goes first. He plays Level Ball to get an egg, another Exeggcute. He puts it in his hand, not onto his bench. He's going to play Professor Juniper to put it into his discard pile. Probably hoping for any basic Pokemon here that's not another Exeggcute. And really, having an Exeggcute on the in play is the it's not preferable, because then you can't use it to put it into your discard pile. You can't use it to discard cards from your hand to get resources. It's pretty much just sitting on your bench, and if your opponent is smart, they will intentionally never target it so that it gets put into the discard pile, even though it would be a really easy prize. Think in the long term. Would you rather take a prize now and have your opponent do more damage later? Or would you rather just leave the easy prize there and handicap your opponent? So for while I was talking, he put down 2 Sneasels and a Voltorb. He does run Electrode in this deck, so that's great to get more cards into his hand. That's for sure. So he managed to get more Pokemon into play, and now it's my turn. I'm probably going to find a Sneasel here. Or not Sneasel, Sableye. Just because Mr. Mime is not a Pokemon I want in my active position. That I actually want on the bench at all times. It's not there to attack, it's there to defend, and it does a really good job at defending against decks that spread damage. So I'm going to get a Sneasel into play. Sneasel, I keep saying Sneasel. Sableye into play. I'm going to do all I can here to make Sableye my active Pokemon so I can Junk Hunt this turn. And there were 2 code cards that just went by. I have mentioned several times, I record this at League, and at League, this is one of just many things that goes on. So, there are people who talk to us while we battle. That's one big reason why I mute this. So, one, the narration, of course, and 2, there's just so much else going on that you probably wouldn't even be able to pay attention. You'd be caught up in the side conversations. But anyway, so I ran a receiver here. I was probably hoping for an N, but Professor Juniper works as well. You saw earlier I played Pokemon Catcher trying to bring up anything else besides the Exeggcute. Like I said, I did not want to help him out by knocking out the Exeggcute. But I flipped tails on the Catcher, so the Exeggcute will be knocked out if I can't flip heads on another Catcher at some point. And really, if I find a Laser this next turn, I'm probably going to use it, because even though I'd be helping him out, I would be taking an early lead on the prizes. And when I was searching my deck there with the Ultra Ball, I noticed that my computer search was in the prize pile. I found that I didn't find that out. I realized that when I was looking through my deck and saw that I didn't see it. And if the first prize is computer search, that will help me out, even though it'll help my opponent out by knocking out an egg. So I played the Laser, and flipped heads on sleep, didn't really matter. And I do not have a single energy in play. And that kind of hurts. Oh wait, there we go. I'm going to attach to the Sableye. I don't know. If I had an energy switch, something tells me that if I had an energy switch, I would have attached to Mr. Mime or treated Mr. Mime and then energy switched to the Sableye. But since I just attached to the bench Sableye and no Dark Patch or anything, I didn't have any in my discard pile anyway. Long story short, this is not a good position for me to be in. I only have one energy in play. So I pass and knock out the Exeggcute, helping him out but also getting me a prize. And now he begins his second turn. He plays another Sneasel, evolves one of his earlier Sneasels into Weavile. Ooh, I see now that he has a Pokemon catcher. I was looking through his discard pile there when he played N, so he's going to help me out a little bit, but also helping himself out as well. And my wife had gotten Culver's food earlier that day, and I hadn't eaten, so she decided to share with me. So those are the French fries underneath my stuff, that little Culver's bag there. So he plays N, I get 5 cards, he gets 6. And it's at times like this that N is really helpful for you. Even if it helps your opponent, it wouldn't help them by much because they're taking less cards than you are. Ideally, the best N would be when you get 6 cards and your opponent gets 1. But also ideally, you're never that far behind. And if you are, you at least have some sort of strategy to win even when you're down on prizes, like decking your opponent out or spreading damage with something like Dusknoir and Flygon. Or even Snorlax, but Snorlax is not a really good deck now that a bunch of stuff was rotated out. Anyway, so I'm just, pardon me, I'm just talking, trying to pass the time while we were deciding what to do. He plays Hypnotoxic Laser. Looks like he flips heads on the sleep. And he's going to attach to the benched Weavile. Level Ball. I don't know if he's going to go for an egg or maybe another Weavile. He does have another Sneasel in play that can evolve this turn. If I were him, I'd probably go for an Exeggcute if possible. Looks like he has 1, 2 eggs in his discard pile. And that sounds about right. He's probably looking for another Exeggcute. No, he's going to go for Weavile. And you know, that's probably that's probably the right thing to do, because Weavile is such a delicate Pokemon, especially up against Darkrai. Darkrai does, without the Dark Claw even, exactly the amount of damage needed to knock out Weavile. If it had 10 more HP, it would be probably slightly better Pokemon, and would be seeing a lot more play. But alas, it has just the right amount to not be good. No, it is good, it's just, it has just the right amount to be knocked out in one hit by Darkrai. So he's going to put another Weavile in play, just to set another one up. And I flip Tails on Sleep, so Mr. Mime is still asleep. I cannot retreat at this turn. Which means it's going to be knocked out going into my opponent's next turn. Or, no, into my opponent's turn, this coming up turn. I attached, I did a lot of stuff there, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying too much attention. I attached another Dark Energy to Darkrai. I decided, you know what, I'm going to be ready for when my Mr. Mime gets knocked out. And really, Mr. Mime isn't necessary in this matchup because my opponent doesn't have anything that can target the bench. So I'm okay with letting it die. I flip Tails on Sleep again. Again, it doesn't matter because I'm going to get knocked out, but, oh, I guess I wasn't knocked out going into my opponent's turn. I guess Mr. Mime has a larger HP than I thought, but at any rate, my Mr. Mime is still my active Pokemon, and it is still asleep. Not much I can do about that. I know I could run Switch in this deck, maybe I should for situations like this, but I run Keldeo in my deck for this very reason, and I wasn't unable to get an Ultra Ball to get Keldeo into play this turn. So, I am kind of screwed. I'm not in the best of positions, but then again, neither is my opponent right now. We're just slowly powering up both our decks, and at this point, it's just who gets powered up first. If he gets a Weavile powered up and like flips a catcher, flips heads on a catcher to take out my Darkrai, I'm in very bad shape. But alas, he cannot get what he needs. He just passes, and my Darkrai gets knocked out. And there's my Mr. Mime gets knocked out, and my Darkrai's promo is active. And there's my Keldeo. One turn too late to save Mr. Mime. So, definitely going to keep Keldeo in play now. I'm probably going to attach a Dark Energy whenever I can, just so that I can rush in and then retreat for free to get rid of any status conditions. So I knocked out his Voltorb with Night Spear, and I put 30 onto his bench Sneasel, which he just evolved into Weavile. And it's about here where if you're not careful, you can just lose track of what's going on. He has another laser. He plays laser, puts my Darkrai to sleep, and all I need is a Dark Energy, and my Keldeo is set up to go and save my Darkrai. So he plays Professor Juniper. He has at least a Dark Energy, so he can do something this turn, I think. Weavile's first attack is Hail. It does 10 damage to all Pokemon, all of my Pokemon, both active and benched. So he could put 10 damage on everything because my Mr. Mime isn't in play anymore. But 10 damage, it can help a lot, just 10 extra damage. But in the current format, we're so used to seeing things getting knocked out in just 1 or 2 hits. It's just not... I'm just not that worried about Hail. So he level balls for another Exeggcute. I get his discard pile to see how many Exeggcute he has. It looks like there's 2 in there still. And now he has a third. He's probably... Yeah, nope, there's a third. So I guess there's 3 in the discard pile. Now he has 4 in his hand after the triple propagation. His Weavile can do 120 damage now with only those 4 eggs. After the Verbank and laser and the poison, I'm up to 150 damage. Unfortunately, he does not have the last Pokemon needed to knock me out. I'm just at 150 damage, and with Keldeo, so long as I attach a Darkness Energy, I am good to go. So I wake up from the sleep, but I'm still poisoned. If I don't get out of the poison, I'll be knocked out this turn. And there's a Dark Energy. I'm going to rush in and retreat to get rid of the poison. My Darkrai will not die going into my opponent's turn. And my opponent sees that and he's like, oh, I wish I had another Pokemon to discard. And that's kind of what I was mentioning before, is that with a Weavile Exeggcute, you need all your Weaviles on the bench in order to survive, in order to keep doing damage even after one of them gets knocked out. Which means the only Pokemon you really have to work with are Exeggcute when you want to discard Pokemon. So, I knock out his Weavile. I think I'm down to 3 prizes now. He still has 6. No, he has 5 after Mr. Mime. And this Weavile doesn't have any energy on it. He can propagation the Exeggcute all he wants now, but he cannot attack without energy. So... I'm just, it looks like I'm talking with someone. No, I think what was happening was, like, somebody was wanting to look at my extra cards that I had for trade, and I was telling them where to find them. So he, gets an energy onto the active Weavile and puts a Dark Claw on the bench to Weavile. And then he plays Professor Juniper. I think that's his 3rd or 4th Juniper. He's played a lot of Professor Junipers this game. Which is probably what you need to do with Weavile Exeggcute in order to get your resources as soon as possible. But even now, he is 2 prizes behind. Even if he were to knock out the Darkrai, that would make us tied. And actually, that wouldn't be too bad for him, because all my energy are on that Darkrai, except for 1 on Sableye for Junk Hunt and 1 on Keldeo to retreat for free. He benches a Darkrai, and he's probably wishing that he had another energy to knock out my Darkrai here, or at least a laser. As it is, the most he can do is Hail, and that's unfortunate because that will not knock out my Darkrai, and I could just knock out his Weavile, and he does not have anything to answer to that. So... And now he sees, I should have played the Dark Claw onto Weavile, then I could have Darkrai. And I decide to be nice. I say, well, if you want to put the Dark Claw onto Weavile, then you can do that. It'll do an extra 20 damage to my active. That will knock out my Darkrai. But still only 10 to the bench Pokemon. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. So he moves the Dark Claw into his Weavile, knocks out my Darkrai, and spreads 10 damage to the rest of my bench. And unless I get a Dark Patch, a Dark Energy, and an Energy Switch here, I cannot touch the Weavile. I do attach a Dark Energy to Darkrai, and I play Laser, flip heads on sleep. I have no idea what I'm going to do here. Looks like I had the Energy Search in my hand, but not the Energy Switch. And since I've already attached for my turn, that's not going to help me out. The most I can do here is Junk Hunt, and that's what I'm going to do for 2 Dark Patch. And it looks like after the Laser, he is knocked out. And we're both in a pickle. I do have the 2 Dark Patch in my hand, but if he plays End, then I am going to be in a really bad shape. But at the same time, he doesn't have any energy in play. And unless he promotes Weavile and does Hail, there's not much he can do. And if he does that, then I'm just going to knock it out really, really easily with Darkrai if I get it set up. So he promotes his Darkrai, which can take a hit. And he's going to attach a Darkness Energy to Darkrai, and then play a Dark Patch to attach an energy to Weavile. And he's going to Level Ball, probably just to see what else he has left in his deck. Looks like he didn't grab anything, so either he didn't have anything or he didn't have anything he wanted to get. I believe I explained before with Level Ball and Ultra Ball, you can play them and you can search your deck and you can choose not to get anything. So he plays a Pokemon Catcher and flips heads. He's going to bring up my Darkrai. Now I cannot put the Dark Patches onto it. Which, actually, that's not entirely true, because I can still rush in with Keldeo, put the Dark Patches onto Darkrai, and then retreat. I think I didn't even think of that until my turn. So it looks like he played his final Juniper there. As you can see, his deck is really, really small now. He's probably just hoping that he has some cards that will help him live a few more turns so that he can take at least a few more prizes. He's already taken 2 prizes, and that's really, really good for his position. Wait, no, he's taken 3 prizes. So right now is actually kind of close. His 3 prizes to my 2. He plays Item Finder, which works exactly the same as Dowsing Machine. He just has it in his deck until he can actually get the real Dowsing Machine, which I agreed to beforehand, so it's no big deal. He's going to Dowsing Machine away, looks like a Colress and something else. I don't know what he would go after here. Looks like he's going to go for... looks like that's Super Rod. So, yep, that is Super Rod. So he's going to put in a Dark Energy. Nope. He's going to put in a Sableye, a Weavile, and a Sneasel. And that's probably the good thing to do, because his deck was getting very, very thin there. So putting cards back into his deck helps him to ensure that if he loses, it won't be by decking out. So he shuffles that into his deck. Oh, plus he needs to get Sneasel and Weavile into play, and if he can do that quickly, then he might have a better chance at beating me. At this point, it's still it's still anybody's game, but I think that I have the advantage at this point simply because I have the Dark Patches in my hand. He's played a supporter for his turn. I can rush in with Keldeo. That puts Darkrai on the bench. 2 Dark Patches will put the Darkness Energy onto Darkrai, and then retreat Keldeo, put Darkrai back as the active, and I am good to go. And he actually propagations his Exeggcutes into his hand. I'm not sure why he did that, since there's no reason to have them in his hand. And if I were to play a card like In, that would put them into his deck, which is, aside from his bench, the last place he actually wants to put them. So he retreats into his Weavile, and I guess he's going to try to hail this turn. He does have an energy on Weavile, so that's what he can do. Actually, no. He has 2 energy on his Weavile, it looks like, and he's going to use his attack to put a lot of damage on my Darkrai. It looks like I'm down to 20 damage, so I'm up to 160. I rushed in with Keldeo, played 2 Dark Patch to put Darkness Energy onto my Darkrai, retreated, so my Darkrai is now my active and powered up. I'm going to play Ultra Ball just to see what I have left in my deck. Looks like I get another Darkrai, because I have 1 in the discard pile, and and it's very likely that he will knock my Darkrai out somehow. He could play a laser and that would knock it out, and I need to get another Darkrai set up quickly in order to answer to that. So now I play Professor Juniper, probably hoping for Dark Energy here to attach to my Darkrai. And there's my second Mr. Mime. So now my bench is safe from hail, in case he wants to use that. And at this point, I think I have the game. I can knock out his Weavile right now. He would need to get my Darkrai knocked out this turn, his turn right here, in order to have a chance. And even then, I have cards in play that will help me get another Darkrai powered up. So there's just, I think I have the game. He draws a Darkness Energy and attaches it to, he's trying to decide whether to attach it to Sableye or not. Really, I think he should attach to Sableye and retreat to Darkrai, but I guess he just knows he's beaten. So looks like he's going to use Confuse Ray and hope to confuse me, but I had Keldeo, so he knew he was beaten. I just needed to use Night Spear, and good game. I don't know what's taking so long. Looks like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. And my last card was Burbank City Gym. Well, my last prize. So that was fun. I had a very fun time playing against Weavile Exeggcute deck. Hopefully, by next week I'll have some battle videos up of me playing with my Keldeo deck. So that's it. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more.